and just go, not today, Satan. Jeez. Like three things that popped up that I was just like, you've got to be kidding me right now. Like, I don't have time for this. But when do you ever have time for problems, right? So anyway, thanks for joining me. Meteorologist Aaron Tuttle here with you. It's 1 o'clock, a couple minutes after 1, and it is time to talk about the severe weather threat for today. We're going to mention where the highest risk is, what I think is going to happen. Que sera, sera, right? Okay, let's get on with this action. All right, so let me minimize that. By the way, thanks for watching me on YouTube. Sorry, I had a first video that was supposed to go out, and then, I don't know, I clicked on the wrong setting or something, and then so now there's a new YouTube setting, so hopefully you guys will jump on the right one, because the other one's dead. It's not doing anything. And I couldn't get my control back over it. YouTube just took it from me. All right, let's move on to the maps. And first thing we're going to talk about is the threat for today. So this is from the Storm Prediction Center. It has a moderate risk of severe weather across the eastern parts of Oklahoma. That's here in red. Comes pretty close to the Oklahoma City metro area, just east, all the way down to Dallas, to Tyler, just to the west side of Arkansas, and hugging the state line there in Kansas. All right, so that's where just put it this way, it's where the highest expected amount of reports will be as far as severe weather reports go. That could be damaging wind, that could be large hail, and yes, that could be some tornadoes. How they break this down into different categories? Well, the tornado threat, as many of you are interested in, does include Tulsa and the same area here in the western Oklahoma, the southeastern and eastern Oklahoma, and right up to the Kansas state line. So you can see that the region of more interest does not include Oklahoma City. That's your first take home if you guys are watching Oklahoma City. We're on the very low probability of a tornado. All right, the higher probability, the 10% shaded ring, is out to the east. Let's see if we take a look at wind. However, that does include Oklahoma City. Matter of fact, a large chunk of Oklahoma. My goodness, all this pink fuchsia color, purple, whatever you want to call it, encompasses about 60% of the state. That's impressive for damaging wind. And that's wind in excess of probably 70 to maybe even 80 miles per hour at times. Hail, new probability focused here, is going to be in this little sweet spot in northeast Oklahoma for the highest probability of significant hail. You do have, though, other hail remarks from Oklahoma City down the south and east, and that is for the large hail of baseball size, is what you probably heard in some of the other forecasts out there. That's where the most likely area for that is. But otherwise, we'll still see some large hail in general, just like any thunderstorms. All right. Particular wording on this, by the way, is severe storms with widespread damaging winds, some greater than 75 miles per hour, large hail, and a few tornadoes are expected to develop this afternoon and evening across parts of the Ozarks in the southern plains, which includes Tulsa and Oklahoma City being affected by these severe storms, including Dallas-Fort Worth overnight. Then it goes on to say a bunch of indices support rapid development in northern Oklahoma, southern Kansas, and those earlier storms will have potential for tornadoes. Initial storms along the boundary will pose a threat for tornadoes given steep level lapse rates, buoyancy, vertical vorticity, and a little surface meso-low that's trying to get going out there. However, fairly rapid upscale growth into a line is expected this evening with storms backbuilding into central Oklahoma. In other words, that helps to limit tornado threat. Now, it does go on to say that you're going to get some potential tornado embedded circulations within the squall line. We usually call those the QLCS type tornadoes. You might have kind of a supercell type structure somewhere embedded within the line that would surprise some folks, but mostly is going to be intense downbursts with widespread damaging winds is the main threat, and also large hail. So those are your two main threats here for the remainder of today. If we take a look at the zoomed in version of that here in Oklahoma City, you can see the breakdown for the enhanced region across our greater metropolitan area, but at a moderate risk just east of Stillwater, stretching down toward Ardmore. Western Oklahoma, this event is not for you. But hail up size of baseballs and winds up around 80 miles per hour. All right, if we take a look at the breakdown for eastern Oklahoma, a large chunk, as we said, is underneath the moderate risk. So hail up to 80 and baseball size hail at the extreme cases. Not everybody's going to see baseball hail. That is not the way this works. That's just what potentially is there in some of the biggest storms. And not everybody will see the biggest storms. We take a look at the tornado threat, very low here, especially in the west side of Oklahoma City. And they have a low category east of I-35, and then it gets a little higher than that, which we talked about once you get from Tulsa southward. As we head on to the next potential timing situation, 3 to 7 is the most likely area, and it probably will kick off about 4 o'clock here on average, up around Ponca City, I-35 corridor up near the Kansas state line. Storms get going there first, and then what happens is they'll start here, and then they'll bubble up and build southwestward on in Oklahoma City, but barely. In other words, I think the west side of Oklahoma City may be bone dry. It may be all on the east side, and kind of splitting the difference where they develop right here in the middle. Now, if we look at the analogs, we talked this last night, for all severe weather categories and modes, the highest probability of severe weather reports will be down across the south into eastern Oklahoma toward western Arkansas. This is looking at climatology. In other words, you take all these severe weather events and you put them all combined to see kind of a similar outcome. This is how things bow out. Even the wind, it's got mostly in eastern Oklahoma. Most of the hail reports are kind of in eastern and southern Oklahoma. A little bit different than the Storm Prediction Center. This is just guidance. This is not going to be the end all of end all, but it does have a little low 2% ring of tornadoes out here in eastern Oklahoma. So that's if you can combine all historical context and events together and you try to match up indices. This is some experimental guidance. Let's just leave it at that. So it does fairly well. It's not bulletproof. It's like anything in weather. But if we look at the best average tornado parameter indices, that's this guy right here. This is the significant tornado parameter index. It's from Tulsa to just west and due south of there, and then back out here in eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas. That's kind of in that 2% ring that we just showed you is right around this region. That's the best probability for a tornado type event. Doesn't mean it's going to happen there, but that's just one of those things that kind of come into play with the best parameters. Doesn't mean you can't get something outside of the best parameters, but that's where the best parameters is, and that's later this afternoon. But you still have to have storms in the environment, and this is at 6 o'clock, and unfortunately, or fortunately, the storms are still up in this area rather than this area. All right, so the timing is not quite right for this. So this is not a huge tornado event by any stretch of the imagination. We have an area of low pressure out here across the northwest. Matter of fact, let me refresh this map. Let's see if it's moved any. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, so there's an area of low pressure called a mesolow right here. Now that is favorable to do a couple of things. It brings in these winds that you see here to kind of curl back into it. That's more of an east-southeasterly fetch. So what you need that for better tornado type potential. And that means that the best tornado type potential in these developing storms is in this area, which is across northern, northeastern Oklahoma along the Kansas state border for any of those supercells that try to form. Now this low will be moving its way from this direction to this direction as the afternoon wears on. So it takes that threat with it, which means you may not have much of a threat here at all over Enid, obviously west of this low, or even I-35 corridor, because you have to get these storms to form out ahead of it. If it's moving too fast, they'll form east of it. All right, so that's where the tornado threat would be. And then they're going to back build southward along this cold front. So this is the, let's see what I want here. I want this guy. So behind this low, and let's see, let's do it like this. All right, so this is your cold front. This is where temperatures are falling, not by much, just a couple of degrees. Now, honestly, it's not even that strong of a front. It's just now kind of developing. Back here is some more drier air associated with that. You have dew points in the 40s and 30s. But here you have a mixed bag here in the 60s. So this will still kind of congeal and form. So it's still in the early stages. But out ahead of it, this southwest wind here, this is all dry air mixing forward. And that will be in your developing dry line. So this is a surface pattern that's still evolving. All right, so you'll get these storms that will develop ahead of the dry line in this area as we go into the afternoon. So that's kind of the focal point on a satellite, or excuse me, a surface observation map. Speaking of satellite, let's see the latest. A few puffy clouds out there, otherwise plenty of sunshine. That means lots of instability. When we look at how things ought to plan out, we'll look at the latest model data. Let's see if this hour's in. It is. Okay, good. So this is our high resolution model. We'll see how things will bubble up. I have not looked at this yet, just now came out. But these are what we look at in the short term when we're guidance for storm development. And it's already got some storms bubbling up here in southern Kansas, just east of I-35. Again, remember, they're probably tracking just east of that surface low, if I were to look at some of its other parameters. And they'll start to bubble up south along that front as it starts to move east, and that contains here over I-35, around Perry, points north from there to Ponca City. But the heavier, more nasty storms would be across Osage County, up into Kansas. Again, that's your best tornado potentials along that first batch of storms up there. The ones that form further south, less so. Why is that? Well, because they're forming a line, and that line is being triggered by that strong cold front. So these are forced storms that erupt along the boundary and oftentimes kind of get undercut by that front if it's moving fast enough. The other issue here within this is you'll notice we're at 6 o'clock. So this is where the model thinks that the best timing is here in Oklahoma City. But it also shows west of town. So once you get to El Reno, points westward, nothing's going to happen. But they form pretty much right on top of Oklahoma City metro area. Now, all the model has to do is be wrong by 20 miles either way, and that changes the forecast here. And so it's a very close call here in Oklahoma City. I would just prepare and plan for storms. The west side less of an impact than the east side. East side would have the better impact of hail, damaging wind, potential, type maybe QLCS type spin up. But you notice the model struggles with the southern part of the line. This is from 6 o'clock to 7 o'clock. Just has a really hard time getting storms really angry here over the metro area. Okay, that's an interesting thing to take home. But if you look across eastern Oklahoma for Tulsa, you guys are just right around my face like a Pac-Man. So those are where all the heavier storms are going to be with the hail and the wind. We go one more time into another hour after that. And you can see the storms try to refire, rebuild down here in southern Oklahoma. Let's do this right here. But they keep going like gangbusters here in southeast. So if you remember the analog guidance, remember where the highest output for the Storm Prediction Center, this mimics what that thinking is. We'll have less of an impact once you head from Oklahoma City south and west into southern parts of the state. Not to say you can have a few storms down there, but just the models are not as excited. As we go through time, the storms continue to move southward to the Red River. They start to build up down around Dallas. So there's some weakness here in between, which is not uncommon. That does happen. So that is where most of your severe weather reports will be here for today across the eastern half of the state. Let me show you this guy here. This will be a little older, but it kind of gets a picture here for the bigger picture of how things evolve over time. So you have these storms that move through in the afternoon, evening across eastern Oklahoma, southern Oklahoma, southeast Oklahoma, and then look how they kind of keep going. We're down to Dallas-Fort Worth by the time you hit the midnight hour, and they'll continue to move on southward from there all the way down the Gulf of Mexico, and they finally die out by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning out over the water. That's a pretty good storm system. All right? That's a pretty good cold front. Now, if we looked at the Texas Tech model, and I really like this model when it comes to severe weather forecasts, usually does very well. It's not perfect, but it does very well. And what you typically take home is some of the things it kind of hints at. All right. Well, it's hinting at that cluster of potential tornadic supercells up here in Osage County in southern Kansas. All right, with that first batch. It's also showing this is about a 4 or 5 o'clock initiation of coverage in this region. But if you notice, in Oklahoma City, we'll go from that point to another hour, and it struggles to build storms back here in Oklahoma City. Matter of fact, by 7 o'clock, it's finally got a line going, but it's down around, let's call it Choctaw to Norman, Moore, and then back down from there toward Duncan. And then it starts to get going after that. So it completely misses Oklahoma City. And a lot of the models last night did that. They had it forming just to the south and east of town. The models this morning, just right across town. So you see how just a difference of 20 miles can make. So in a forecasting type situation, that can be frustrating. Here's a look, by the way, long term. If you're wanting some heat and you're wanting summer, this is what's coming for you this weekend. So put on some sunscreen, 91 degrees on Saturday, 85 on Sunday, 87 on Friday. So a good stretch of some really hot weather coming up for spring here across Oklahoma City. And this will mimic other parts of the state. The weather will not be that drastically different from one area to another. We'll cool down a little bit next week. We do have a threat for some more severe weather, probably maybe Sunday night. I have not looked at that in detail. We can do that real quick, and then I can turn you loose. Let's see. Let's do... where do I want to go? I need to go into... let's try this. So your take home, by the way, if you're late and you're watching, yes, there'll be some storms, mostly confined across the eastern half of the state. There'll be a lot of wind and hail producers, large hail at that. Sometimes could be of approaching tennis ball size. We had that a few nights ago. That's not out of the question, but that is potential on the table. Let's see, through the weekend, dry after this event, by the way. I'll also show you the rainfall amounts, and then we're going to move on. Let me go long term. All right, right, so where was the May 3rd, 4th timeline? Nothing showed up in this data set. It completely squashed it. It's got a front coming in, but it's got it coming in dry and late. It's late to the party. Comes in Sunday, actually comes really early, so it comes in on the 3rd on the morning, Sunday morning. So bad timing for that if you want severe weather. After that, good grief, man, just pestilence. This is the lamest severe weather season period that I've seen recently. I'm not complaining, of course. I'm just surprised because we usually get severe weather during severe weather season, and the models are indicating just more non-event type issues, which is fine because tonight's gonna be a pretty good event. This afternoon will be a pretty good event, so we don't need a lot of them. Just as a meteorologist, you like to have some excitement, just not too much, just enough to kind of go, well, that's neat, But we don't like death or destruction or anything like that. But we are meteorologists, and so we do appreciate the weather. I'm not speaking for all meteorologists, because I'm sure there are some that like atmospheric chemistry. That has nothing to do with severe storms or forecasting, more like aerosols and stuff like that. But the real action, storms, my opinion. All right, let me think. Anything else? Oh, I was going to show you rainfall amounts. So let's get to that. And then we are finished up. Thanks for watching, by the way. This is kind of a late lunch hour for, I'm sure, some of you. Rainfall amounts anywhere from 1 to 2 inches across the eastern third of the state, and they slack off a bit by the time you hit I-35 corridors. Like I said, west of town, you get nothing. It's all I-35 and east of town as far as anything substantial in the rainfall buckets. This is the way this look of rain will go, which is good, because if you just saw that long-range outlook, it wasn't looking very good when it comes to rainfall overall. And we're going to need some more rain as we head on into the rest of our spring. So it does come with severe weather, but unfortunately, sometimes you got to get the rain. Okay, I've showed you everything I had to show you and want to talk about. So just be weather aware. If it turns out you've got a potential for a tornado, it's always seek shelter in the lowest part of the building, away from outside walls and windows. We might be in a situation to where we have, other than those first couple storms in northern Oklahoma, more of a QLCS type event. Those tornadoes are very small and very weak typically, the majority of those. They're also very hard to pick up from Doppler radar. They're very tiny. They're not like your normal supercell mesocyclone-induced tornado. So if they get too far away from the radar, they're not going to get seen. And that's just because the beam width of the radar is too wide, and they're too small of a data point within that beam. Now the terminal Doppler weather radar has a narrower beam, about half the size of the NextRad, and so it can pick those up a lot better, but again, it's a distance factor. But we might be dealing with some of those this evening. Kelly doesn't like the A&M shirt. Well, believe it or not, I had a gray shirt on, but it kept like being see-through, and so my arm would disappear, and you guys would be so distracted on me having half a torso that you wouldn't listen to what I was saying. So I had to go change the shirts. But hey, I'll be proud to support my alma mater. You guys also on Twitter and Periscope, thanks for following and watching. And also feel free to leave your comments. I usually check them at the end before I hang up the phone. My patrons, you guys are pumped and ready. So Wes, YouTube was going. So there was 2 YouTube deals. I explained that at the beginning. Let's see. Jessica's watching from Northwest Arkansas. Buckle down the hatches down there for this evening. It'll be a rough go in the evening hours. Little wind, little hail. And like I said, winds could be up to around 80 miles per hour. Now, keep in mind, a small tornado, guess what wind speeds they have? Around 80 miles an hour. So you can get hit by damaging straight line winds and get just as much damage as a small tornado. Now, another caveat of that is structures. Now, if you're in a strong, stable building, office building with straight line winds, you're good. If you're in a mobile home, you're not good. I don't care. I've heard it all. They roll and they rip right apart. They're not made for wind. So if you live in a mobile home, you got to get out and find a sturdier shelter. So if you got a storm coming, use my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It'll warn you in advance, give you more time. Say if you're not paying attention for whatever reason, it'll give you plenty of time to get out and go somewhere else to find shelter. But obviously, have a game plan where you want to go. If you live in Oklahoma, you should by this point in time. It does not include a tank top white t-shirt with a can of Budweiser in your hand and sitting out on the porch watching it come at you. That is not a game plan. All right? That's a stereotype. There's a bias. Don't be that biased stereotype. All right. Although, however, over time, I do see a lot of videos showing up on social media these days that we weren't used to getting in the past, and it's not an Oklahoma thing. People everywhere just break out their phones now. They could be 10 feet from a tornado, and they have the invincibility of Superman, and they'll roll that camera. And I'll just be like, what were you thinking? It's fun, but it's good video, but my goodness, man. That's not a good place to be. I wouldn't want to be that close. All right, let me skip through a couple of your comments. Skam through? I don't know what I was trying to say. Skim through. Brain sometimes misfires as you get older. We got some Longhorns. We got some, don't say that. That's worse than your hate for Aggies. We got some Sooner fans in here. And some OSU fans too. Well, you should. You live in Oklahoma. So if you're asking Oklahoma City, like what's the deal? East side under the gun, west side it develops on top of us. Typically, when a storm is developing on top of you, you don't get anything underneath because the updrafts are forming and it's starting to carry those larger particles upstairs to get going. So a lot of its energy is spent building. And then it's the east side, then that gets the fallout. And then from that point forward, the fallout continues and the building continues and it gets a little heavier. Jill, I usually try to show Southern Oklahoma pretty good if there's something to talk about. There wasn't anything to focus on. The fact you're gonna have a squall line, toward 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock this evening in that area, and what's left of that will be kind of broken in nature, and the same threat for everybody else. See, Nan's a fan. She's got the gigging going on. I know a lot of you guys sent me the maps that showed everyone in Oklahoma getting tennis ball size hail last night for yesterday. I'm just like, whatever. Y'all trying to get me worked up. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. All right, anyway, so bottom line is there will be, my guess is a couple of tornadoes, legitimate mesoscale supercell type tornadoes that will be in northeastern Oklahoma and southern Kansas, closer to the state border. Osage County would be a good county to see some of those in that area. If they try to develop west of there, they'll have to go earlier than 4 o'clock because that little mesolow is moving east, and it has to form along and near that mesolow to the east of it. So you can get anything west of it. It's already just west of 35, so it's running out of time. That's fine, by the way. Let's just keep it going, right? The back build on the cold front, as it continues to form, will force trigger those storms to develop under a cap and drier layer in the atmosphere. So here in Oklahoma City, we got a lot of dry air, which means there'll be high base storms, which means, again, hail and wind. The tornado threat is so low, extremely low here. It would be higher once you get in eastern Oklahoma, but it'd be more of the QLCS type tornadoes, so they'll spin up along the leading edge of the squall line. That's how I foresee it. So you can't always get a tornado warning for those, just so you know, because they don't always show up on radar. That's how small they are. Usually only the bigger ones do. And the bigger ones are very rare. Usually the smaller ones is like EF0, EF1 type tornado damage. All right, so that was it from me. What I'm going to do, again, if you don't have it, grab my weather app, AT's Weather to Go. It does predict those QLCS tornadoes, by the way. It will give you a twisting storm alert. It can come 15 minutes before you even get an official tornado warning, or that tornado warning may never come, and you'll still have the twisting storm alert for the QLCS tornado. It comes on a BTI scale, 1 to 10. That's let's call it a confidence scale. All right. So if it has a 1, 2, or 3, you don't have to worry too much about it. Just get your attention. Say, hey, there's some storms coming. They're gonna be strong to severe. Keep an eye on it. All right. If that goes to 4, 5, and 6, be ready. Have your game plan going. Know where you're gonna go for your shelter. Let your family know. Rustle up the pet. If that number jumps up to a 7 or 8 or 9 or 10, just go ahead and go ahead and get in the shelter. All right. So the probability of getting a tornado out of that is much, much, much higher. It's almost certain once you get above a 7. I haven't yet to see it not happen. So that's my cutoff of how I use it, that information. Again, it's called AT's Weather to Go. It's free, Apple and Google Play. Load it on your phone. Do it now. Don't wait. Tell your friends and family about it. It's free. And then I will run a kind of an informational radar and graphics and stuff likely later this afternoon once things kind of get going. So I may put that up live. You might see that. I won't be on the screen, but that'll be up there for you, information. And then if it looks like tornadoes will happen, I'll probably kill that feed and then start a new one, just so you know how this is going to work. So if you're watching a live feed and it ends or drops, that's because a new one's going to start. All right, and then you should get notified by Facebook and YouTube and Twitter that a new feed will start. And that time, if I'm on live at that point, it's me you're seeing, this face in this box, that means tornadoes are happening or about to happen. So that's what I do. I cover those. Now, on a rare occasion, if it's just a horrific damaging wind event, we're talking over 80 miles an hour, in a larger area, that's like a tornado, and I'll typically cover those if I've got time. Maybe really, really, really widespread, huge hail event, something like that. But I usually focus my time on just tornadoes, but it also depends on how much time I have. I'm very, very busy. busy. So I only got so much time in a day. But I do try to do what I do. I do what I can for you guys to keep you safe and sound. And this is one of the means I can do it. All right, so I'm out of here. Guys, have a great rest of your afternoon. Be safe. Have a game plan ready, just in case severe weather strikes your neck of the woods. We'll talk again soon. All right, be safe out there.